We just started to track the rise of baby raves. So, something I've seen pop up a lot here actually in New York. And there was a sold out show at Brooklyn Bowl last month with DJ Lenny Pierce, who I heard is the hottest baby rave DJ currently touring the US.
This is Erin Rechner, Head of Kidswear at WGSN. Today on the podcast, we're talking kids and specifically what they'll be wearing in the future. Hear about the most influential trends that Gen Alpha, that's those born between 2010 and 2024, are driving and what they want in their wardrobes. Erin heads up the Kidswear team at WGSN and she'll let us in on what she's predicting for future years. I'm Carla Buzasi, CEO of WGSN, the world's leading trend forecasting company, and you're listening to Lives of Tomorrow, the WGSN podcast about how we'll live our lives in the future. Erin, welcome to the podcast. Please, can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi, everyone. So my name's Erin, as Carla mentioned, and I lead the Kidswear division at WGSN, covering everything from babies to kids and tweens. And I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, where alphas are honestly some of the best dressed kids around, and they really give off that perfect aura, to put it in Gen Alpha terms.
I feel really old because I only just learnt aura about a couple of months ago. But it's been really good because now I'm picking up on it with my stepkids who are using it ad nauseum at the moment. So at least this time I didn't have to ask them what it meant. I was a step ahead on that front. So we're all good. Okay. So today we're talking all about kidswear and how it's evolving in the future, very specifically at Gen Alpha. So give me some kind of headline trends that are going to be impacting this particular generation.
Of course. So some of the trends we're tracking for alpha specifically include things like joyful dressing, right? So this really fits into that wider consumer sentiment around glimmers. So where those doses of joy are really coming through in things like clashing prints, unexpected color combinations, kind of that antithesis to the basic neutral clothing that we've been seeing for some time. And something else to watch out for is gamified fashion. So Gen Alphas are, of course, chronically online, right? So it really makes sense they want to look like their avatars in real life. And 60% of this age group said they're more likely to buy from brands they discovered while gaming. And this is according to a 2025 BOF survey. Looking at things like comfort really being, increasingly important, particularly for that Gen Z parent, as they're really kind of shifting towards these more active lifestyles and really trying to help kids move away from screens. And something, Carla, that you'll might find interesting is we just started to track the rise of baby raves. So something I've seen pop up a lot here actually in New York. And there was a sold out show at Brooklyn Bowl last month with DJ Lenny Pierce, who I heard is the hottest baby rave DJ currently touring the US.
That's a very niche part of a niche industry. Like, I want to be a DJ. I imagine a number of people can call themselves DJs, but I'm a DJ specifically for babies.
Yes, if
That's
you look him up,
unique.
it's something I just learned, and apparently his global appeal, he's everywhere. So there you go.
When you say gamified clothing, so is this, it's more about looking like an avatar rather than, the logo from your favorite kind of game?
Yeah, so what we've been finding as we kind of are looking into this is that since this age range, alphas, they're really been born into this era of the digital space. So when it comes to that, they're not really differentiating it as much as say you or I would. And they're kind of, yeah, between the physical and digital space, it's kind of the same to them. So a lot of kids, I've even heard from a couple friends that they want to dress like their avatar. So they want the outfit they're wearing in the game. They want the sneakers that they have on. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Amazing. Okay. So in your forecast for autumn winter 26-27, we've got empowered play as one of the key trends. So how, first of all, explain what that is, and then, how big is that going to be? So if you're a parent at the moment and you're thinking, what are your kids going to be dressed like? What does empowered play mean?
So empowered play means you're kind of trying to balance the playful with the practical. So think designs that are not only commercially relevant, but they can also really kind of stand out in that crowded market. And this really ties back to what we were just talking about, glimmers, and kind of how important that sentiment will be for really all ages and products beyond just apparel. So the story really aligns with the rise of the kid alt consumer as well. And of course, a lot of them are parents themselves. And they're investing in items that spark joy. Think things like the bag charm, collectibles, plush toys. I promise not to say the L word here, but yeah.
Okay. Um, you've mentioned the parents now, which obviously have to come into this. These little Gen Alphas don't have big bank balances of their own. What are the most important factors that are going to determine what will make these parents buy?
So there's a lot that's going on in this space, but they're really just looking at things that are affordable and sustainable. And this really kind of presents a big challenge for a lot of the retailers because they want both of these and they want both of these at the same time. So it's
Mm.
really that kind of strong desire to purchase these more circular products, but the interest is really kind of contingent on the reasonable pricing. And of course, during, a more difficult trading environment, that's more important than ever.
And you're not seeing that going away at all. I mean, again, these often these podcasts can end up being quite political and talking about economics and things like that. But from a mindset perspective, you still believe next year that it's going to be price first and sustainability second.
Yes, definitely. And it is kind of interesting as well because we're seeing the narrative shift a little bit as the kids become more influential on the actual purchasing. We're seeing this a lot throughout TikTok, but we're seeing them kind of inform the decisions a bit more of what the parents are actually buying, and this can be anything from food to fashion.
Let's think a little bit about sort of the changes that have taken place. So, how are Gen Alpha dressing differently from the way that millennials, Gen X. I always feel like I need to insert Gen X into that list. So, because otherwise we always get forgotten. Millennials and Boomers, Gen X, we do exist in the middle there. But for I guess the generations that have come before them, what's the big shift?
Today's kids are a lot more casual, and they're a lot more expressive as well, and alphas are really experiencing something called age compression, which we're tracking at WGSN, and that's just where they're maturing faster, they're kind of displaying these more kind of advanced digital literacy and brand awareness from a really young age, and this is definitely influencing their fashion choices as well.
We're talking about, various generations engaging with brands and stars. We've got the parents in the mix there. We've got Gen Alpha specifically, and then you're going to have the influence of their siblings. In your research, what's a way that a brand can stay relevant across different generations?
I mean, I think just really adopting that multi-generational marketing strategy. So that really means this kind of authentic representation and really engaging in multiple age groups. So thinking within your campaigns, product development, storytelling, we've seen that also on the catwalks come through. So rather than focusing on that singular demographic that the end product will be in the hands of, just really kind of looking to all different people who will be looking at this. Just because the parent is buying, it doesn't mean that they're the ones solely navigating what to buy, right? So the goal is really to make every generation feel seen, heard, included, and really kind of tapping into shared values. So looking at things like nostalgia, playfulness, and family connections, which are all strong drivers of our forecast trends for alpha.
How much of this is you're sitting in the US, I'm sitting in the UK? How much of what you're saying is relevant across the whole globe, or are we looking here with a particular Western slant?
I mean, I'd say definitely globally because a lot of the influence we are seeing are coming from all regions of the globe. So a lot of things, especially in APAC, that are driving a lot of these trends is a lot of inclusive family. When it comes to the marketing strategies, the ads that they're putting out, there's a lot of twinning and kind of cross-generational dressing that looks and feels similarly. So I'd say it's definitely, there'll be kind of localized regional aspects to it, but it's definitely coming from that kind of global lens and that kind of global look with the research that we have.
Yeah. Is this generation in the way that your generation, my generation, because we have access to so much information, those global trends or trends that are popping up in far flung places, we're so much more aware of them. They come into our sort of social media streams, news streams, and things like this. For this generation, is it the same? Are they getting that via the games that they're playing, via the channels that they're on in a similar way, or do you think there is still a sort of a regional specificity to what they're seeing and looking at?
I mean, I think from a regional aspect, they're seeing even more than they've ever seen in the past because we had cable TV with only a certain amount of channels. But now it's just exponentially grown. So I think even regionally it's expanded. But also, I think it's a quite beautiful thing to be able to see what's happening on the other side of the world. So we are seeing kids be a little bit more grown up in that sense and just kind of having more influence whether they travel across seas or not into that world. And just as an example, I actually met with a couple of my really good friends last night and their daughter, who is one of my favorite Gen Alpha kids, and she's speaking Japanese. She loves to eat
Wow.
sushi. She's into anime. Like she is just so much more, you know, globally influenced than a lot of, kids I knew growing up.
Yeah, and actually, even if you look at the data in terms of travel and how it's bounced back post COVID, people are traveling more than they ever have, and they are being more exploratory, I would say, as well. So it's people getting out of their comfort zones and taking families along with them. And, there's numerous examples of those, those social media families who've built huge businesses around their travel. And, your average family are not going to be traveling in that way, but it is likely that they are probably getting outside of that sort of typical family holiday, certainly than the camping trips to France that I grew up with. Yeah, things look a little bit more, I was going to say exotic, but a little bit more interesting maybe because the world has opened up. It really has. Okay, let's pause a little minute. I'm going to try and get to know you a little better, or let our listeners get to know you a little bit better. So we're talking kids' clothing. So with that in mind, what's the best piece of clothing you had passed down from a family member as a kid?
So, since my brother is 10 years older than me, I didn't really have much passed down to me, but I definitely passed down all my baby clothes to my plushies. So, there's that.
Amazing. Okay. Advice to parents of twins: dress them in matching clothing or different outfits?
Always different. And I say
Okay.
that because just because their outer appearance says we are the same, I'd like to think their inner selves are probably having different interests, likes, things like that.
Future trend, clothing or otherwise, that you wish would arrive already?
Oh, let's see. I'd say I've always had a love for retro shows, like things like the Jetsons or those Tex Avery cartoons that kind of predicted the items of the future. So as an adult, I feel like pretty upset that I've never seen that Jetson kind of dress selector machine, which projects the outfit onto your body so you can kind of just walk out ready for the night out. It's just amazing, and I would love to see that one day.
Okay. What's your most used website?
Well, outside of WGSN, of course, I would say National Geographic. It's something I personally love, and I think get a lot of great information on conservation, a lot of technology, as well as, such beautiful imagery. So that one's really inspiring.
Oh, that's a nice one. And a fun fact about you that most people don't know already.
Hmm. I'd say if I weren't a trend forecaster, I would have wanted to be a marine conservationist or biologist. I really find the ocean so fascinating, and I would just love to do something to protect its ecosystem. And I swam with manta rays last year in the Maldives, and they basically had to pry me out of the ocean. So,
Okay, all right, back to the topic in hand. So let's gaze into the future right now, and let's pick up on some of the kind of the bigger movements that we've been forecasting for a while. Let's start with design for well-being. Talk about how important that is and how much the kind of average kid on the street is going to see that filtering down into their wardrobes.
so we looked at a lot of this, especially during our recent forecast workshops with the wider teams, as a lot was happening in the active space and women's wear and menswear when it comes to well-being. And it definitely trickles down into kids wear. So we're discussing a lot of products that have a lot of calming effects with circularity in mind as well. So for kids, that turned into themes such as this kind of soft and comforting theme around sound bathing. So that was something that we pulled up for specifically the baby and toddler market, and also looking at things that can calm. So even incorporating scents into items. So even a t-shirt having, say, a lavender scent or a chamomile scent for a calming effect. We're seeing that on the rise as well.
But that, I guess some of that speaks to the advance in technologies when it comes to materials and fabrics. So maybe let's pause on that for a moment, because we're talking a lot about aesthetics here, but technology has driven some of this because it's just things that are available that wouldn't have been in years gone past. Give me a so what do you, within the research that you've done, is there anything that you've been inspired by when it comes to technology advancements?
I mean, I think for kids, there's a lot of kind of interesting stuff that we're seeing in technology come into play when they're kind of affecting the kids' products. So there are some interesting ones, I'd say more so in the baby space that are
Okay.
being integrated, like integrating tech specifically. So there is a really cool brand called Nanit, and they have this kind of sensor-free breathing device that's integrated into its design, and this helps monitor the baby's breathing motion using
Wow.
AI-powered tech. So something that, yeah, is really interesting that we're also seeing is a brand called Owlet, and this was actually in one of our previous forecasts, but still relevant today. And again, for the baby market, but it has a smart monitor in its sock to track a baby's pulse rate. So I think that's quite interesting, especially for the preemie, the baby market, that helps parents feel safe.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really interesting. It's not unsurprising that that's beginning to be more readily available. I guess you get to the point which is it's going to need to reach some kind of critical mass before it becomes affordable for all. But harnessing those kind of things in a way that actually can, well, not just be good for the baby, but good for the family as well, in terms of decreasing anxiety and concerns and things like that, which is great. Okay, let's talk a little bit about craft and creativity, because craft is a kind of movement. I feel in the decade that I've worked in trend forecasting, you kind of see it come to the fore and then fade away, and it often spikes when technology is advancing at a huge rate. And I think because of the advancements in AI and how we're all getting so used to using it, you often then get this sort of balancing effect, which is we then crave more sensory experiences and feelings and textures and those kind of things, and craft kind of comes back again. So how's that affecting the kids market?
I mean, I think as kind of almost a backlash to AI and tech and even the overstimulation of screens, craft has its place, especially for kidswear. And it's almost getting back to that human-centric design element where craft is really important for things like storytelling. And I think that comes into play with kidswear. It's kind of always been there. I think craft for kids is something that's a little more prevalent than perhaps other sectors, but we're definitely going to see items that have that hand touch that is not being created by AI, isn't too tech looking, and really kind of dig back into the depths of the past, of things that worked and the things that are really representing that human touch will be key, especially in the kidswear market.
Are there any, on a sort of more prosaic level, are there any kind of specific items that you're forecasting that every Gen Alpha is going to have in their, little chest of drawers? Is it, is the short back, or is it, or is it just, this is still kids' clothing? It's now just more about the aesthetics that we're seeing the shifts.
Yeah, for kids' clothing, the actual silhouette isn't shifting all that much. So, for example, within women's and men's, we always see that being more prevalent and being more important for the changes and evolutions of the styles. But for kids, it's really going to be, as we track, especially our data, our proprietary data, it's always showing us that the t-shirt, the legging, the wide leg pant, those always kind of bubble up to be some of the key items, and they've been consistent year after year. So it will more so come down to the print, the graphic. Kids is so strong in print and graphics, and what's kind of driving that as well as color. So that will be
Yeah.
more important than the actual silhouette.
Okay. And what about the merchandising side of this as well? There's always like a hot cartoon or movie that's influencing so much. When the littlest of my stepkids was growing up, it was all about Paw Patrol. Like, I mean, there were so many Paw Patrol t-shirts and pajamas and all of those kind of things. What are you forecasting to be big next year?
Oh wow! So there are so many things going on, and there's so much in that space. I was just at the licensing expo in Vegas where I saw all of this. There was a big push for Shrek 5, which I'm not sure if it's 2026 or 27, but it's something we are seeing so much excitement around, and that's something that kids and adults love, so that will definitely
Yeah.
be multi-generational. Of course, Frozen 3 is coming out, so highly anticipated activations, tons of, different collaborations and things of that sort will be coming out with Frozen 3. There's so many more, but those 2 are kind of top of mind, and we're also seeing a lot around K-pop and kind of that story come through, and, my friend's kid who I was mentioning before was actually telling me at our dinner she would not stop talking about that new Netflix show that released around K-pop bands. So interesting to see a lot of kids grasping onto these different storylines and different cohorts.
Yeah. It's really interesting though, because you've got this kind of classic Hollywood movie and the influence that has. And, as you, both of those, you're pointing, these are sequels and so have spanned so many years, so many generations as a consequence. And then you've got something which is, for an American kid, is being influenced by music from a totally different part of the world. And I think that does speak to how the world has evolved and everything we've been talking about today in terms of that connection and the way that information is shared so much more readily and easy. And this generation don't understand that. It's just there and they get access to it, which is fascinating. Let's talk a little bit more about how these things are going to be bought in the coming years. Clearly, this generation is hyper connected. They understand how to navigate phones and things like that. We've got so much better in terms of integrating between physical and digital stores. And, yes, during COVID, it really accelerated the take up of e-com. And we have seen a return to bricks and mortar. And for lots of brands, that's proving to be very, very successful. But what does the future of clothes shopping look like for this generation, or the parents who are actually buying for this generation?
Yeah, so in-store shopping for kids is really becoming really highly interactive, immersive, play-driven, as we were talking about, empower play, that's kind of fitting in here, but really that focus on blending technology, learning, and entertainment. So looking at things like online and AR shopping and how it's evolving to offer this kind of more personalized, almost that gamified experience that really kind of mirrors the fun and discovery that we had going into physical stores. And just we're already seeing stores in the US actually mirror some of the bigger shopping centers that I saw when I was visiting China and South Korea, where there are more experiences that are really kind of integrated throughout. So not just a bunch of clothing stores lined up, they invest in things like aquariums, climbing walls. There was even this amazing swimming pool where kids could take swim lessons in the mall in one of these kind of big commercial shopping centers I saw in China. So really with the so-called death of the mall, as you will, we're seeing
Yeah.
these, old malls turn into these as well as newer malls even integrating play such as that kind of mini theme parks that we saw inside the American Dream Mall here in New Jersey.
Do you think that there's an opportunity there, kind of, or maybe I'm thinking I can sort of see this within it. Again, you can't have a conversation about any generation and not talk about screens and things at the moment. But there is that want and need for connection, and that this is a brand activation play now as much as a kind of commercial opportunity.
Yeah, we're seeing as well that, like how you mentioned, it really was so driven in e-com, especially during COVID, after COVID, but we're seeing that really kind of even out. So even when we look to Gen Z, they are wanting to shop in store. So a lot of Gen Z now are parents and they're kind of discovering and finding things within, their digital spaces, whether that be TikTok, Instagram, but they do want that, you know, hand touch, hand feeling what things look like, trying them on, because even though there's a lot of new tech when it comes to fits and trying on digitally, they still wanna see how it looks exactly on them. So, there's definitely kind of the evening out of the 2.
Now, you can't, again, have a conversation about trends without sort of things which are going to have more of a lasting impact. So, for you, what trends do you think in this space are future proofed?
I mean, I definitely think anything that is more circular, that has circular components, anything that can be repurposed, resold, handed down. I mean, especially with the cost of living crisis. We're seeing a lot more in the rental and resale space, especially the resale space, even within Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups. We're seeing a lot of parents looking to swap and looking to kind of gain more with stuff that's already out there. So I think that will only increase as we see people more attuned to what's happening in fashion in general and just the overconsumption overall.
And I'm going to put you on the spot here because there's always that say do gap. People say that they want things which are circular. They say they want things that are more sustainable. And then often it does come down to price. We've already kind of touched upon this. Do you think in this space, there is the opportunity for that circular design to have real impact?
I do because when you think of items that have a lot of trims, a lot of details, a lot of components, a lot of hardware, when you're looking at cost, those are things that cost more. So an item will cost more if it has, 10 metal buttons on it, whereas a more circular product wouldn't actually have those things and it would just be monomaterial, made of one fabric, something that can be more easier to recycle. So I think from that point of view, if you look at it that way, it actually could align a bit more with a lower cost.
Okay, so finally, you work in a space that sort of by its very nature is quite joyful. We're talking about children, we're talking about fashion, and especially the kind of key trends that you're talking about in this very much kind of joyful dressing. So does that make you more optimistic about this space, or are you still anxious that there's more that needs to be done in terms of the sustainable aspect of it?
I'd say I'm cautiously excited, despite, the enormous amount of challenges we're facing globally. I would like to envision a future filled with kind of untapped potential where challenges are transformed into opportunities.
Okay, amazing. Erin, thank you so much. It's been fantastic to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Carla.
A big thank you to Erin Rechner, Head of Kidswear at WGSN. Please check out our other podcast, Create Tomorrow, with my colleague Cassandra Napoli. But that's all for now. I'll return with a new episode of Lives of Tomorrow in 14 days. My name's Carla Buzasi. I'm the CEO of WGSN, and I'll see you next time.